Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us and braving the weather. It turned out we are having a great day in Laurel Hollow, and we're very thankful to have an event like this with the sponsorship of the Fiesta Tableware Company, who has been so good to us. And I want to give a special thanks to Occasion Nation for all the hard work that was put into having this event. I'd say that they did as much work as I did. So we're going to have a little history lesson on the history of Laurel Hollow Park. I don't know if everyone here is from Newell or not, but I can tell you that there are a lot of legends that have come out of this park. We're going to learn some things that maybe you didn't know about Newell today, hopefully. We're going to see some great pictures, and I couldn't have done this without the help of Mark Gonzalez, who did most of the research for this and has been a tremendous help. So let's go back to 1902. 1902, this was all farmland. In East Liverpool, the pottery business was booming. Women's fashions were really long dresses and high collars, and Beatrix Potter had just written her book, and The Tales of Peter Rabbit, and Theodore Roosevelt was president. There were 34 potteries in our area at that time. And the Homer Laughlin China Company was one of the many who were looking to expand. There was really no room left to expand along the river in East Liverpool. So some of the pottery owners got together and they formed a company to look into expanding to the Newell farm, where we're sitting now. Homer Laughlin and his brother Shakespeare had already left the business by this time, and the Wells family and the Aaron families had combined forces to take over the Homer Laughlin China Company. So their product lines had expanded from toiletware into ornate dishes, and the business continued to grow. So with Edwin Knowles and John Taylor, George W. Clark, and Joseph G. Lee, they purchased this tract of land, the Newell Farm, and formed the North American Manufacturing Company. They laid out a town, a water supply system, a firehouse, and a power system. The city of Chester had blocked the construction of a streetcar into Newell, so they had also designed a bridge to ensure safe passage to this new development. Until it was constructed, the main way to get across the river was by the way of the Ollie Neville. I don't know if any of you have heard of that ferry that used to bring people from Jethro Hollow in Ohio to this side of the river, but that's how people were getting here. The bridge had, this picture is from 1905, and this shows the bridge had already been constructed. You can see it in the back. Well, I hope you can see it in the back. It's still kind of light out. And that's why we're having this event so late, is because we want to be able to see the pictures that are on the screen. This is the construction of the Newell Bridge and the trolley tracks on the West Virginia side. It is a suspension bridge that's built with the same concept as the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco and the Brooklyn Bridge. The deck is supported by cables, which allow the bridge to move and sway, making it less rigid, allowing it to last longer. That explains why it's been in such good shape for such a long time. It stood the test of time. This also makes the deck lighter, and there's no need to use salts, which corrode the road. And because it has had annual maintenance, it's expected to last several more generations to travel between the states. You can see the wood decking with the trolley tracks on the bridge. There were two sets, one running to Newell and a set running to East Liverpool. The wooden deck was replaced in 1923 with new planks. In 1954, the wooden deck was replaced by steel grating, which is still in use today. The Kahn Welding and Machine Company of Newcastle installed the steel floor system, which was manufactured by the Reliance Steel Products Company of McKeesport. The bridge was closed for 7 weeks while the steel floor was installed. So this map is dated November 17th, 1913, and highlights the trolley tracks that ran between Newell and East Liverpool. You can see how the tracks run along Washington Street and dip into Laurel Hollow Park. After exiting the park, they run to the corner of 9th Street where the trolley would loop around for its way back to East Liverpool. And here's a close-up view where it's dipping down into the park. This is Newell circa 1907 with Plant 4 in the background. The homes on Grant and between 5th and 6th Streets were the first ones constructed in Newell. Plant number 4 was built 600 feet long, 300 feet wide, and employed 1,200 people. By December 7th, 130 homes were built, and the population was 700. The 2010 census shows that there were 1,400 people in 2010, so just for a reference point. This is a postcard circa 1907 with a trolley running on Washington Street, which I think probably all of us here know that that's the main street. The large building on the left is the Aaron Building, which was torn down in the 1990s. The opposite side of Washington Street had not yet been developed. These are the main offices in Plant number 4, Newell. Once the main offices were built, the management, accounting, and staff were moved to from the older East Liverpool location to the new one in Newell. Notice that there are 5 floors to the plant. At some time, the entire 5th and most of the 4th floors were removed. Must have occurred sometime after the early 1920s, since part of the 4th floor had to be kept since the vaulted ceiling of the showroom of the 3rd floor projected into the bottom of the 4th floor. It's not really clear why this much floor space was taken out. It's possible the floors were removed after the more modern plants 6, 7, and 8 were opened in 1923, 1927, and 1929. Did you all know that the original fire station in Newell, which was this wooden one, hose house number 1, and it's kind of cool to see all the old firemen too in the pictures. There were a lot of volunteer firemen. But the building that housed the first permanent fire station is still in the parking lot in the number 4 plant parking. So that used to be the firehouse, if you ever want to take a look at that. This is a picture of the firehouse that's on Washington Street, Newell. We estimate this picture about the 1960s. The top picture is Newell from 1905. The bottom is circa 1920. The comparison shows how much the landscape changed in just 15 years. Not only were HLC plants 4 and 5 built, but so was the Edwin M. Knowles China Company. By the late 1920s, all the bottle kilns you see in the picture were replaced by tunnel kilns. So here's a close-up of the development of the town in the 1920s. How many people here knew that there was a floral company in Newell in its beginnings? Did anybody know that? That was something I didn't know. The Lake Newell Floral Company's greenhouses were constructed during the summer of 1907. You can see plant number 4 of the pottery in the background. This would be where houses on Harrison Street and the parking lot for plant number 4 are. An article from the Evening Review dated August 20th, 1907 reads, "A carload of glass arrived in Newell for the Lake Newell greenhouses, and the new improvements at this company's establishment on 6th Street will probably be finished by the end of the week. The 4 new greenhouses have been erected by the Winnedy brothers of Chicago. These brothers, 5 in number, are of Swedish descent and make a business of building greenhouses. They erect every part from start to finish and are counted the best in their business. When completed, the Lake Newell Floral Company will have the finest equipped and largest greenhouses in this section of the country. In view of the large business carried on during the past seasons, the new additions will not prove unwelcome." The greenhouses were eventually demolished, but here is a stock certificate for the Lake Newell Floral Company that Mark and I found at the Museum of Ceramics, which is also a really cool place to visit if you get a chance. This is an undated photo, estimated about 1930. The trolley's headed to East Liverpool. Where this would have been taken would have been if you were standing across the street from what's now the Tri-State Tap House, looking towards the red light. The sign on the front says Newell, East Liverpool. By the time this picture was taken, houses were built on both sides of the main road. Has anybody heard of George Washington Clark? George Washington Clark was an importer of English and German wares. He contacted the pottery in 1899, Homer Laughlin, China, and asked for samples. He was so impressed with HLC's work, he decided he would sell it exclusively. He was so successful that he became the second vice president of the company. His involvement in the building of the town of Newell centered around Laurel Hollow Park. This park wouldn't be in existence if it wasn't for this gentleman's vision that he had here, and he invested his own money in it. He had no home. He didn't have a house that he lived in. He was a traveling salesman. So he traveled the world, but this was where his heart was. Laurel Hollow first was launched as a picnic site and park in 1905 with the completion of the bridge and streetcar lines. Construction of the benches, table, and swings drew crowds of Ohio residents, and as early as July 1905, an orchestra was playing at the site. The area was landscaped, various parts cleared out by blasting, and a dam building in 1906 for the artificial lake. The park boasted the first open-air theater, and a pianist played for the movies and other stage shows. Later, the free movies featured over 5,000 feet of film with the bill changed 3 times a week. There were ponies and burros for children to ride, a fountain and pond with ducks and swans, peacocks, deer, and the lake which froze over in the winter, thick enough for ice skating. If you want to read about the newspaper account, the very first trip taken across the trolley bridge into Newell, on the Newell Bridge and Railways Facebook page, I've published the entire article on there, so you can read what the newspaper wrote about that, which was a really interesting account. One of the first pieces built in the park was the fountain. The centerpiece divided the artificial lake to the north from the zoo and hollow to the south. This photo shows how it looked in 1907. Most of what you see here is now covered under Washington Street, but if you walk the perimeter just behind the picnic tables over here, you can actually still see part of the foundation of the original fountain. This is another view circa 1909. By this time, the entire structure had been fenced in and lamp posts added with strings of lights. Small bridges on the sides were constructed so maintenance could get to the center section. The lamp posts for the park and other parts of Newell were supplied by J.L. Mott Ironworks of New Jersey. One of these was moved years ago to the home of J.M. Wells Jr. on 6th Street, a short distance from the park, just up the hill. Here's an account from the Evening Review, May 19th, 1908. Newell Park will be a blaze of glory next Sunday evening. All of the lights throughout the grounds will be illuminated for the first time. Preparations are already being commenced to take care of the large crowd that is expected to visit the local resort on that date. G.W. Clark, superintendent of the park, who is now in the West, in the interest of the pottery, which he is the head salesman, has sent word that he has purchased additional seal at San Francisco to take the place of the one which died at Highland Park Zoo, Pittsburgh, last winter. The new acquisition will be shipped next week. Mr. Clark has also purchased 2 additional seals for the Highland Zoo at Pittsburgh. Interesting thing to note, our small town of Newell drew a lot of people from Pittsburgh, and our zoo was bigger than their zoo was at the time. George W. Clark had formed a relationship with their zookeeper, and they did house our animals in the winter, but there was a lot more interaction between people in Pittsburgh at the time in our area. During this time, Rock Springs Park was drawing a lot of people as well. So it's amazing to think about because not really a lot of people are drawn to Newell from Pittsburgh now, which we would like to change. We'd love to see them come to Laurel Hollow. But at the time, this was a really big deal. This is a view of the fountain with Ohio in the background. It features the swans that lived in the pond section of the fountain. This is a postcard marked to 1909. Postcards from this time period start off as black and white photos. Colors are added during the printing process, and some end up looking a little more realistic than others. I also didn't realize that that's how these were created. Here's a full view of the fountain in 1909. This picture would have been taken where the sign is on the main road today directing people to the factory outlet. The red dot has been added to indicate where the circular flower garden was eventually built. Above and slightly to the right of the red dot is the trolley car passing through the park. The circular flower garden was built around 1910 and was the last major piece added. To the left is the bear pit, and in the background is the fountain. We actually have an enlarged photo of this place where this was taken. And here's a picture comparison from 1910 and 2020. This is the most intact part of the park today. All the stones have been placed back in their original positions and is maintained every year with new plants. Lights were added to the 4 pillars in recent years. 1907, the monkey cages on the far left, the rustic bridges going over Muckmore's Run, the stream that passes through the park and empties into the Ohio River, and the stone tunnel in the background. Here's a closer view of the stone tunnel. This is caved in years ago, and most of the pieces are now in the stream. This is a closer view of the monkey cages. There are no remnants of the cages left at the park. In fact, most of the steel was removed from the park during World War II. Besides the monkey cages, this included steel from the bear pit and the raccoon enclosure. This is a view from the opposite side of the monkey cages, this time with the fountain in the background. This is circa 1910. Much like today, Homer Laughlin workers would come over and enjoy Laurel Hollow Park on their lunch breaks. These are Estella Hines, Maud Birch, Anna Tice, and Jenny Markin coming over to pose for a picture on their lunch break. I don't know if any of you are friends with Bill Crawford on Facebook, but he comes over and stacks rocks and then posts pictures of them here in the stream. And Alexis Nile posts her pictures on Facebook of the beautiful pictures that she takes as well. The lake was man-made using water from Muckmore's Run. A 1907 HLC catalog describes the construction of the lake. Quote, "As the ravine approaches the river, it widens and the banks are lower. Here has been constructed Lake Newell, an artificial body of water covering 20 acres. It lies in an exquisitely beautiful basin of horseshoe shape, 1 mile in circumference. For a year, a large force of men under the direction of an expert landscape gardener have been engaged in beautifying the surroundings of the lake." This is a photo of the lake taken in 1907. This is a magnification of the park from the 1907 lake photo. The red arrow points to the fountain, and the blue arrow points to the seal pen. Both of these are mostly covered today by the main road. Here's the seal pen. You can see a portion of the lake in the background towards the left. Another view of the seal pen. Like most animals in the park, the seals were brought in seasonally from Highland Zoo in Pittsburgh. An article mentions one problem the residents in Newell faced was the constant seals barking, which would echo in the valley. Sometimes I think I still hear them if I'm on my porch. Could be the neighbor's dogs, but it might be the seals, who knows. This photo shows some of the deer, which were fenced in their own section of the park. The inner frame was drawn in to indicate which sections of the photo was to be used with the Homer Laughlin 1912 catalog. Outside this frame are some other animals kept in the park, including 2 peacocks. I would love to see us bring 2 more peacocks down here. That's pretty cool. So here's some more pictures of the deer. These are also taken from the collection of the Museum of Ceramics and the Ohio History Collection. This is an evening review notice about trained animals coming to the park. I'll just read it to you briefly. Professor Briston's Equine Wonders, a trained horse, trained mule, and 10 educated ponies will arrive at Newell Sunday morning and will be on exhibition at the park during the day. The animals will be quartered in a tent at the resort. Professor Bristol will open his pony show at the park Monday afternoon. The exhibition has been one of the attractions during the season at Pittsburgh's Hippodrome. And here's some children attending that event. I'm not sure what an educated pony is, but maybe we can try to book one of those for an event here. I think that'd be awesome. Here's a notice for a motion picture showing in the park. These these events were drawing people from Steubenville, Canton, Pittsburgh, Wheeling. Everybody was coming to Newell to see our beautiful park. I'm not going to read that to you. It will be available for you to see. This is Swing Court, probably the earliest portion of the park that was made up of swings, picnic tables, and benches. This would have been located right about where the Wells High building is currently. Here's a magnification of people in the swings. Large groups from clubs and churches would use the space for picnics and other social gatherings. I don't know how many of you have access to the website newspapers.com, but if you do a search of Laurel Hollow Park on that site and in these early years, it is amazing how many notifications there are of events that are happening here, just local people gathering to meet. I think it's harder to do that now with social media. I'd love to see us start gathering like that again, though. This is the building of the raccoon pit. This was recently recovered when clearing a new area. The stone border remains intact, so if you go across the bridge and to the right, you can see the actual foundation for where this raccoon pit was. We're trying to figure out what we're going to do with this area. We've been lucky enough to have a group of people working to clear it. So we're going to be looking into ideas, and we're open to any suggestions. How many people are here just to hear about the bear fight? Okay, well, it is probably the largest urban legend, and it's interesting because some of the older generation think they believe that they may have seen this. They didn't. This took place in 1909. On March 6, 1909, the Evening Review ran the following: largest bear cage in the United States, being erected in Laurel Hollow Zoo. 2 polar bears to occupy it. With the erection of the ironwork by Taylor and Dean of Pittsburgh at the Laurel Hollow Park during the next few days, the largest bear pit in the United States will be located in Newell. The largest bear pit in the United States was in Newell, West Virginia, folks. The contract for this bear cage was let some time ago. The concrete work for the cage was constructed several months ago. The cage will be 40 feet by 50 feet. The next largest bear cage in the world is at the National Zoological Garden at Washington, D.C. George W. Clark recently purchased 2 large polar bears from a zoological garden at New York. The bears will be shipped to Newell April 1st. Does anybody want to hear an account of what really happened? Okay, brace yourselves. The newspaper reporting at that time was kind of graphic, I'll tell you. And think about it, this took place right where I'm standing. White bear fight, Newell, 1909. Big white bear kills smaller white bear at Newell Park on a Sunday afternoon. George Clark makes mistake when he puts another white bear into the bear pit and pond, by J.H. Sims. White bears will fight even if one is a female. The male bear, the large one, came from northern Russia. Mr. George W. Clark had him several months, buying him after he established Newell Park, which he supplied with deer, squirrels, birds, and animals of several kinds. The park grounds, the fencing, building the bear pits, and cementing swimming pools cost him several $1,000s of his own money. It was his great pleasure to do this for the children of Newell and East Liverpool. The smaller white bear came from the polar region north of Alaska. It was a beautiful young specimen, not nearly as large as the male. She arrived in a special car one Friday afternoon and was put in the bear pit. After being allowed to dive and swim in the pool until night, it was locked in a cage pit built in the hillside. Ernest Tetreault, head animal keeper at the Highland Park Zoo in Pittsburgh, directed the caging of the animal, and at the time warned the management of the local zoo that it would be dangerous to place the 2 bears, unacquainted as they were, together in the same cage. The few who were fortunate enough to be present at the Laurel Hollow Park Zoo the morning of the fight will never forget the sight of that awful duel to the death of those 2 ferocious polar bears who met unacquainted in the pit. Both bears were to have been received here at the same time, but through some mistake in shipping, the smaller one was the only one to arrive on that Friday. However, on Saturday morning, the second animal came, and a beautiful specimen he was. Previous to the arrival of the second bear, the smaller one had been securely locked in the cave at the rear of the pit. The employees of the park transferred the second, or larger bear, from its shifting cave to the pit in the park. Securely locked in the cave as it was, the smaller bear was immune from attack on the part of the larger one. However, catching the scent of its mate-to-be, the larger male bear immediately located the other and at once began to growl and strike the iron bars that separated the two. Finding that there was no chance for battle with the bars between, the big fellow soon tired of flaunting his challenge in the face of the caged one and betook himself to sport in the pool. So wrapped in bathing was he that he soon forgot about the inmate of the cave and was as playful as a kitten. Thinking that the danger was past, and that the two bears were thoroughly acquainted with one another, the management of the park decided to take a chance and release the smaller one from the cave in order to give the visitors an opportunity to witness both bears in the pit at the same time. With much caution and care, the task of releasing the smaller bear from the cave was begun. Slowly, the iron door was released, and slowly the little fellow began to edge its way out into the bear pit proper. Meanwhile, the big bear continued his sporting in the water, unmindful of the proceedings. Finally, the door was swung clear, and out crept the smaller bear. Round and round the side of the pit walked the intruder, while the big bear still continued his sport in the water. After taking a long plunge, the big fellow came to the surface and clambered to the pit. It was then that he first discovered his mate-to-be, after she had been released from the cave. With a growl, the smaller bear rose to its hind feet in order to get a better view of the enemy. Taking in the situation at a glance, the large fellow began to prepare for the attack that was sure to come. Noiselessly, the two stalked round and round, awaiting the first feint. Suddenly, without warning, the little fellow, although weighing less than his opponent by nearly 200 pounds, struck wickedly at the face of the larger one with his paw. This was the throwing of the gauntlet. With a roar of fury that could be heard for squares, the big bear advanced for the fight. Both were confident of victory, and both wormed toward the other. Once within striking distance, the big bear was the first to lead the attack. With a roar, the battle to death was on. Over and over, the two combatants rolled each other, trying to secure a death grip. Realizing this was a mistake Realizing that a mistake had been made, the keepers and workmen began to make an effort to separate the two monsters. Who wants that job? Large iron rods were poked and jammed into the rolling, roaring mass of fur and flesh, but with little effect. For a time, both bears were on the aggressive side. After a time, the weight and bulk of the large bear began to tell on the smaller but game enemy, and it was seen that it would be only a matter of time until the death would end the struggle. For 2 hours, the two beasts gripped and clawed each other. 2 hours of this. Meanwhile, the streetcars to Newell are packed, and everybody wants to come witness this themselves. That's sick, but that's what happened. The brutes were enraged by the smell and taste of blood, and the battle grew fiercer. Finally, by superior strength, the large bear secured a grip on the neck of his opponent. Realizing this advantage, he fell directly on the smaller one and began to grind his teeth into the neck. Once, for a moment, the smaller one escaped from his predicament, but weak from the loss of blood, he was powerless from the attack of the other. With a terrific swing of his huge paw, the big bear struck his weaker mate and completely disemboweled. This was the death stroke. Moaning piteously, the little fellow ceased his struggles, while the victor began his attack more furiously. Seizing the prostrate bear by the throat, he dragged him round and round the cage, smearing blood everywhere, until the interior of the pit resembled a slaughter pen. Still gripping the dead bear by the neck, the big fellow dove into the pool, dragging his dead mate with him. The savage nature of these two ferocious beasts was demonstrated here. The big bear would chew savagely at the smaller one and then dive below the surface. Rising again, he would repeat the act. Time after time, he dragged the dead bear in and out of the water and round the pit. After much trouble, the keepers managed to throw a rope about the body of the dead bear. Little by little, it was dragged to the door, and finally, when the victor was playing in the water, the body was smuggled from the cage, horribly mutilated. Finding that the object of his fury had been taken away, the large bear began to roar and stamp around the cage. I think this is about the time probably everybody was clearing out. I don't know for sure, but that's probably what I would do. The duration of the fight is estimated about 2 hours, and it was one of the most hideous sights that one could imagine. Blood bespent, the two animals fought and raved until death ended the battle for the right of domain. After the dead bear had been removed, it was found that instead of being a female, as it had been supposed from the first, it was a male. The management of the park when the bear was bought was under the impression it was buying a female bear. However, such was not the case, and it might be due to this fact that the two bears fought. Those in a position to know state that this distinction made little difference, that the animals would have fought just the same. So now you know. Now the mystery of the bear fight has been solved, and I hope that you're able to sleep tonight. Here's a picture. These pictures were taken from the collection of Bob Wells. So here's a picture of everyone attending. You can see someone running in the corner, running down to look at the fight. Here's a picture of the dead bear with the larger bear sitting on top of it. George Washington Clark died in Los Angeles, California on March 13th, 1913, and was buried in Denver, Colorado. Nobody stepped in to take control of the park, and the first part to be abandoned was the zoo. On June 5th, 1914, the following article ran in the Evening Review. Quote, "What will doubtless come as a blow to the civic pride and public spirit of many Newell residents is the announcement made today by the management of the Newell Park Company that the animal zoo, which has been a feature of the resort here since the town was built, will be abandoned. There will be no more animals in the park this year, according to the decision just made by the management," it was said. In the past year or two, the animals have been annoyed and abused in various ways, and because some people will never treat them otherwise, such persons will here thereafter be deprived of the opportunity. It has been the custom of some people to stone and poke sticks at the monkeys and other animals that have been housed in Laurel Park during the summer months, and it will be recalled that a valuable seal died here under mysterious circumstances. Even the duck pond will now be without inhabitants according to park management's decision, end quote. The Evening Review wrote about the lake on February 21st, 1921. Quote, "The Newell Park Lake, just west of the HLC plant, built about 15 years ago by the late George Clark as part of the Laurel Hollow Park, is gradually disappearing. The lake at one time was perhaps the largest artificial body of water in the section. The ravine in which the lake is situated is now being used as a dumping ground for saggers, ashes, and other refuse of Newell's potteries. The pond is the last remaining attraction of the park, which has at one time brought hundreds of picnickers to Newell every day. The park was built at an expense of approximately $10,000. Bear pits, monkey cages, an artificial pond, and a deer range were some of the attractions at the park," end quote. I just want to stress the importance of how important it is to have people volunteer to do things, to care for things for the community. George W. Clark felt a lot of passion for the park, and we have a whole group of people now who share a passion like that, and we do appreciate community support. Normally, this would be just about the conclusion of my talk because it's normally focused just on the park, but since we were doing this in the park and mostly Newell residents were coming, Mark and I thought it would be a good idea to expand it to some of the other things that are around Newell. So we're going to talk a little about the Aaron and the Row buildings. The Aaron building housed the school until 1912. It also had offices for the Newell Bridge and Railway Company, Lawrence Cooperage, which was a barrel manufacturer, the Newell Company, so that was where you went to pay your water bill at the time. The Presbyterian and Methodist held services here before their churches were built. Eventually, the post office was housed here in the back. The front was a laundromat, a video store, which was my very first job at age 14, and a florist. It was torn down in the early 1990s. The Row building, which, I had to look up how to pronounce that. I wasn't really sure. I had been calling it the Raw building, but I did a search and found out it's pronounced the Row building. It had many things, but consistently the upstairs were apartments and the downstairs housed a drugstore. Dr. Turk, Dr. Stewart, and Sam Carnahan all had drugstores. Then Sam Carnahan moved his to the building next to Park Drive-In. Before it was Thornberry's store, it was Gates Butcher Shop. Currently, it's in renovation to become a high-end restaurant. The Presbyterian Church on 6th Street, they organized in 1906, meeting in the Aaron Building. It moved into the 6th Street location Sunday, June 18th, 1911. Last services were held Christmas Eve 2012. Stained glass windows in the Presbyterian Church were donated in 1965 by some of our local supporters of anything that's happening in Newell, like Sidney Porter, Sr., Arthur McLean, W.E. Wells, Jr., Edwin Mercer, Virgil McEldowney, Edward Hupp, Harry Graham, Clyde Cousins, John Robinson, David Jester, and Alvin Thornberry. You can see a lot of the nice pictures that are taken from the inside of this church, and you can see more of the stained glass windows on the Laurel Hollow website. This building currently is in a really sad state. I believe it might be maybe up for sale, I'm not really sure, but it definitely is in need of some TLC. The Methodist Church at 4th and Grant, this was built in 1912 at a cost of $8,000. This church remained in operation until recently, and I've heard that it's been sold to a non-church entity. The Nazarene Church, located at 3rd and Washington, you can see the parsonage behind it. The new building was constructed in 1956 directly behind it, and this spot currently is where the fellowship hall is that was built in the 1970s. Now, I'm willing to take any information anybody has on the Church of Christ, the original building. We are unsure where this picture was taken. We're assuming that it was not in the same location where the new building was built, due to the fact that you can see the lower levels. So, and this is taken in the back lot. So I have to believe that this is probably on the opposite side of the street. Do you know? Behind the school? Okay, I'm really unsure if that's where it was or not. And we do want to see if we can find more information. We'll post about it if we can find that out. The 4th Street School housed all classes from 1912 to 1927. Something we just learned today that is really interesting. There was a windstorm that blew the windows in the Wells High, that blew the windows in this building, and actually injured several children. I'm unsure of the fate of one, but it crushed one little girl's skull. So I'm going to post something about that when we get a little bit more research, but I did not know that happened. This house grades 1 through 6 through 1951, when the Jefferson Elementary School opened and this building was demolished. The Knowles China Company paid for a playground to be built on this site. Jefferson Elementary closed in 2004. It was then sold for $10,000 to Mountaineer Park, who then sold it for $62,500 to Ohio River Corridor in 2018. In the River Style section of the review on Sunday, August 17th, 2008, a feature ran on the revitalization of Laurel Hollow Park. At least 25 local residents signed up for the Newell Community Improvement Coalition and worked hard to get things cleaned back up. Slowly, they uncovered the beautiful features and worked on making this special space a place where local folks can come to gather for a picnic, listen to local musicians, have family events, and make memories. Last year, the Wells High Junior High had their all-class reunion party on Sunday in Laurel Hollow Park. This is an uncovered relic. We're unsure what housed it, but it is still sitting up here. I don't know if you saw it when you came down, but there are actually pictures of it in the park in the early 1900s. Here's the park set up for a wedding. I'm sure you all have seen the butterflies that members have painted, and we've put around the town. That's gotten a lot of attention from other community improvement groups. This is an event that was in 2021. It was a glow party that was done by Occasion Nation, and we had a really great attendance here. And it's fun to be able to have people that will sponsor events like that for us. And it's also nice that Occasion Nation is willing to donate time and equipment to have events like this for us. Here's a local musician playing in front of the Bear's Den where we're standing. These are the scarecrows that we had at the front of the park entrance. We've been trying to keep things along the front here seasonally to just let people know that we're here and doing things and try to make the town look nice and give them a reason to visit us. Our very own Grinch invited kids to put letters for Santa in our box so he can steal them, and the kids get no gifts because the Grinch has their letters. The Grinch has been doing a lot of really fun things in the town and keeping the kids interested in not just the park but in Newell. We decorate Christmas trees at Christmas time that we line up along the front, and we have a memorial tree. These are the children of Amber and Bill Ware hanging an ornament. We also have decorated eggs, and we had the local vocational school help us by cutting the eggs out for us, and then their graphics class also decorated an egg. This is the Laurel Hollow Park website, which houses a lot of valuable information. I encourage you to check this website out and learn about even more things than what we've talked about here today. And I also encourage you to like our Facebook page. And on behalf of the Newell Community Improvement Coalition, I thank you for coming to attend. We did not have rain, and we did draw a crowd, so thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. Does anybody have any questions? No questions for us? Okay, well, oh yeah? I don't know why, and somebody has asked me that before, so I did try looking in the newspapers.com page to see if I could find any articles on it, and the only thing I found was where the paper actually said that they did refuse to build the line. I don't know, I couldn't tell you why. You can draw conclusions, but not sure. Maybe because we had such a gem here, they didn't want the competition, I don't know. And yeah? Oh, this picture here is this is an aerial view of you. So you have some kind of relation to how big the lake was. Mark, can you tell us a little bit about this? Show us where everything is.
This is Washington Street. The fountain would have come up around in here. The seal pit would have been right.
Sorry.
Back from what?
Here, I'll hold it. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. The fountain would have extended into the road. The seal pen would have been right here. That's why you can't see it, because it's all covered up. The lake would have extended from here all the way to the river. And then this is when it was used as a dump. This picture was taken in 1993.
This is a pretty sizable park, actually, and it's more than what you can just even see here. There are trails that go back there, and I really encourage you to take a look at the bridge. But the park, I think, was well over 100 acres at the time. So, are there any other questions? Yeah. I think that it's. I want to say it's just over 100. And I think it was before, I'll double check that and put it on the site, but I think it was like closer to 120. Any other questions? Oh, yeah. So there's one trolley car left in the area that we are aware of, and it sits in the parking lot of Casa de Emmanuel. They use it for storage. You don't even know it's there, I mean, until you actually look to see. So I really think that would be a really fun project if we could bring that trolley car back. I would like to see us bring a lot of things back to the park, but that's what I think would be the most fun to bring back. The trolley car used to come back around here, where the road is currently that you came down when you came down to visit. Yeah, we do have some original tracks, so we're hopeful to make that project a reality. Hopefully a lot of people will come together and help us. It's not something that one or two people can do. The more community involvement we have, the more work we can get done. Are there any other questions? Well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming and enjoying some time, all of us spending together. And it was special to get to do this actually in the park. I've done this presentation a couple of times already, but it was really great to do it here, and I thank you all for coming.